Hello and welcome to this mammoth flip-top workbench. We're going to get started with some clips of walkthroughs and functionality displays, and then continue on to the build process and some insights I learned along the way. I don't claim any brilliance, of course, and many of the ideas implemented in this build were taken from several other YouTube videos. So that being said, do your research and find what's best for you. So let's get started. Here's a workbench, an adjustable height platform for the table saw in case it gets changed out. 2 sets of workbench casters because it's really heavy. Kind of slot in the back, the adjustment nuts. All these are the tools. There's going to be a drawer down there, a buffer. I'll show you how they all turn out or turn up. Here's a portable bandsaw. This is the power for the bandsaw because there's a trigger that's always on. This is a 3-way switch. There's one on the other side because this is a planer. And there's going to be dust collection in the middle. They can go either to the planer or the miter saw. Here's another kind of belt sander, custom made. Some T-track slots. Goes through this one for the miter saw as a stop block and clamping. There's going to be butcher paper here to be able to roll out for the whole table. And also I'm going to do some steel pegboard for some tool storage. And this one is the drill press. Here's the other 3-way switch for the dust collector. Miter saw, and here's the dust collection. So that 3-way switch switches that outlet. Of course, it's plugged into the dust collector. Here's a cyclone. So I'm going to run that hose up and right through the top of the table so it can plug into the back. There's going to be a drawer there. There's a plug for that one. Once again, this is a switch for the portaband. That's the one. So these rails that are also on the front and the back help keep it level. There's the in-feed and out-feed tables for the planer. This one was fun because it overhangs the table, so the belt, or the sanding belt, goes all the way around those. But it had to be over the edge of the table, so kind of had to have some fun with it to make sure that it would fit. vacuuming. This was fun. This was the right scenario, especially for these really thick ones. Hole saw all the way through. And forgot to mention, these are the cool little gadgets that I found for the hinges. So everything turns easily. They have grease fittings, so you can see the steel pipe in there and the bearings. I made these slots in here so you can raise or lower it to make sure that the table is the same height as the platform. Here is the main power source. So it looks like it's an RV or generator plug. So I did it this way because it's 240, so that we can be running the dust collection and miter saw and or the planer at the same time as the dust collection, so nothing trips. But most, so about half of the stuff is on one leg on the red, and so you can see that we have two legs coming out. And then down here is the plug for the table saw. This is just going to be empty as per the customer's request. Okay, so I'm going to take you kind of through how this whole setup went up until this point. These are all videos that I took, in progress, and you can see that kind of things changed throughout the design process. And after this next video, you're going to see some from in progress pictures and some other videos that are kind of explaining how we got to the design and the setup and all that stuff that we are at now. I hope you enjoy. Okay, so in this picture you see that the miter saw and the planer have switched places. We decided to do that because the miter saw that is in the picture is not the one that he wants to end up with. So we ended up using the footprint based on my dual bevel sliding miter saw, and so it takes up quite a larger footprint than his miter saw. So that explains that decision. Here's kind of the general design of how the cubbies came together. I typically just build cabinets, and so this is kind of a different scenario than what I was used to. But I oversized the cabinet slightly to accommodate for the tool and a little extra wiggle room for brushes and different things based on each compartment. And then I left about 4 to 5 inches in between each compartment for wires and for maneuvering some things later on, including the hinges that you'll see in future videos. So the total footprint for this workbench came to about 4 feet 3 inches wide. Used 4 foot wide plywood, and then there's a little extra frame, on the bottom, which you'll see in a minute. 1.5 inches on each side, so 4 foot 3 inches. And then also the length was about 11 feet. I don't exactly remember, but it was 8 feet long for each of the flip up tools, and then about 2.5 feet, maybe 3, for the table saw, and then a couple extra inches on the other side, the short end for the butcher paper. All right, here's the progress. Table saw is going to go here. Here's a platform for it, so it's adjustable. Buffing wheel, bandsaw, planer, and the big grinder, butcher paper roll. Might do some pegboard down here too. All right, and over here is the drill press, and Here's a miter saw. And this is going to be dust collection and drawers and miscellaneous storage. So here's kind of the layout. Miter saw and planer are switched. There's a table saw that's eventually going to be replaced, as is the miter saw. So we're taking into account those for resizing. Obviously the miter saw isn't nearly this big, so bigger miter saw and bigger table saw, so this will be adjustable as well. Okay, so here I didn't have, at the point when I designed this initially, I didn't have the dust collection in the vortex funnel, so I had to drop out this panels and then basically made it almost floor level so that it could sit recessed in there and all the hoses and everything fit. But fortunately there was enough room. You'll see in the following picture that I kind of resized and reframed the opening for it to fit snugly in there. You'll see in this video that we went through a couple different ideas for getting this thing portable. So you'll see initially I was going to mount these same feet sideways so that they wouldn't stick out. You'll see some kind of extended 2x6s there on the sides that I was hoping to mount them to, but when I first mounted them there, they wouldn't swivel, which of course is a big issue. And then of course the single caster on each corner just couldn't bear the weight of the whole workbench. It was okay when it was not using, didn't have the tools in it, but I had to, you'll see later on, put another set of casters on there, and then we ended up welding a steel rod so that you could easily step on it and engage and disengage each caster. Okay, so here you can see that I used some spacer blocks in the front, bottom, and on the outside of each cubby, of course on the back, to create some good lines and squareness. Really, you'll see that there are the Craig pocket holes to attach the top. I didn't want any screws sticking out of the top if I could help it. Now here you can see that I put on the top I did not glue it down because if there are any issues with it later on and the potential for damage, it would be easier to just replace the top and trim out new boxes than rip it off entirely or try to recoat it somehow. So you'll see here also a better shot of that recessed box for the dust collection. Okay, plenty of videos on YouTube that help with cutting out the tops of this. I wanted the top to be a single piece, just to make it look nice, and of course you use a jigsaw to cut close to the sides, and then use a flesh trim router bit to clean up those edges, and then chamfer it or round over, kind of depending on your preference. You can see in this picture that I haven't yet cut out the bottom left top piece because of that extra large grinding belt, and I just hadn't figured out how to make that function properly yet, and I didn't want to totally ruin the top. So I don't have any pictures really of how I ended up with a mechanism that worked for me. I went on YouTube and looked up a lot of other things, and there's some really good ideas out there. But I ended up putting using a 3/4 inch steel rod as basically my hinge point, and then I spaced off a couple other pieces of wood that exact same thickness. So you have to be careful that it is the exact same thickness as your rod, so that it doesn't bulge or doesn't wiggle too much while you're using it. So I spaced those, depending on the tool, about 6 to 8 inches apart, depending on how much leeway I needed to pull that platform forward or back to knock it in place. Then I put a couple other slats of wood towards the outside so that I would be something extra to screw into. You can see the screws here. And so typically I used oak because oak is just awesome and strong and readily available where I live and work. So for most of the tools, I didn't use this they call it a pillow, because they weren't as heavy duty and I didn't need the space as much. But especially for the miter saw and the planer, I use this to get a better action because it's so heavy. And I use those pillows in a situation like this where I wanted to make it to be able to raise and lower it depending on the levelness of the table, the tool to the table. So I made smaller slots like this for the T-nuts, which I had to modify, and then a larger opening for the 3/4 inch rod. So here are the T-nuts. I just clipped off the edges, and I couldn't find any just regular flat flange things, so of course make do. So here it is installed. You can see how the T-nuts don't grab on, but they pinch it nice, and you can see that the steel rod through as well. And here you can see it from the outside view. You can see the nuts that are going through the T-nut, and then the steel rod sticking out. These are really fantastic little hardware pieces. I'll see if I can find a link to them and put them in the description. So I'm going to pause a little longer on this shot here. You can see the variance in the sandwich, I talked about earlier, of the top piece, bottom piece, and then what's in between, of course, the sandwich. So the buffing wheel right there has only one layer. That's kind of where I started. And then when I got to the portaband, I realized that based on my design, I couldn't put the rod in how I had done exactly for the buffer wheel. So I had to drop it. Unfortunately, I'm sure there's a way that had I thought about this initially, it would have been okay, but alas, no. So that's why it looks different. Of course, the planer is recessed, so you have to take that into account based on the how tall the platform is, and then that's the equivalent on the underside of that extra kind of wasted space, that chunk on the bottom of the platform, so that when you flip it so the tool is down, of course everything is flush. A little bit of math, but you're fine. And here for the drill press, I was able to do the standard, one layer sandwich, for lack of a better term. And then for the miter saw, this was a little trickier. I had to, like I said earlier, that we were kind of forward fitting this to a larger miter saw. So you can see another little platform on there that raises it up to the height of the tabletop, but he's going to be able to take that extra piece out to use a beefier miter saw that he's looking forward to buying. So for whatever reason, I just forgot to take pictures of everything, I guess. But here it is with the doors on. You can see that I did some panels that were more permanent, and then the ones behind the light switches I made removable, so access the wiring and any of the tilting mechanisms. But everything is kind of standard here. This was a little. You can see the miter saw right there underneath that cup. You see, I wasn't able to make that flush, of course, because when it's flipped over, the tools. I didn't want the doors to get in the way of any tool action, so that's kind of in the way. And kind of mentioned it before, but all those extra switches and everything are, kind of a neat design functionality, in my opinion. Of course, you can see what a mess I make whenever I'm just trying to get some stuff done. So I got really excited about this T-track. I got it lined up with the back of the fence on the miter saw. Like I said earlier, we'll be able to get changed out to the larger miter saw, and it'll still work. Of course, he'll have to fold it down and then kind of turn it to the side to get it to fold away, but it still will do that. But I was really excited that the T-track could go through that. The channel can go through the top of the part for the drill press, which is on the left. It's cool that it's really functional, and also looks pretty freaking cool, if I'm kind of. So you can see there on the bottom by the miter saw cord how I mentioned it in another video, but this, and the same with on the other side. Any time you have that extra layer of thick worktop, I would approach this by doing the hole saw all the way through, and then cleaning it up with a jigsaw or a handsaw of some sort. I also haven't touched on this in this video either, but one of the things that I just couldn't find anywhere was a way to flip the tool like this, like a total 180 flip vertically, and be able to have your tool plugged in all the time. So this was my idea for that. It's not necessarily beautiful. I think you could probably make it cleaner, but it does function really well. You can see I have these little bracket tie down kind of things. I don't remember what they're called, but to keep the cord there, so that of course when you flip it the other way, it doesn't have to be in that channel that I cut. So I'd kind of wish that I would have done a uniform shape there, but I wasn't, live and learn. But I chose the V shape, which you see on all the other ones, because I thought that it would help the cord kind of to find its space in that. I haven't had any issues though with the that U shape on the miter saw, with the cord finding its spot in that. So do with it what you will. Here's the obligatory shot of the one drawer that ended up being on this workbench. Kind of as we went, it was decided that really all the other hand tools and stuff would be stored at the end on the pegboard and then elsewhere in his shop. So this is just for extra wheels and some storage. There is room under every tool to put some loose things, but so I could definitely add drawers later. He could add drawers, however it turns out, but this is the only drawer that was in it upon delivery. And speaking of delivery, there was only one way that I figured that we could make this happen. You see that, well, of course it rolls around pretty well, even though it's like a half ton fully loaded with, as you see it here. it rolls really well with the double casters, which you can see are, we finally got it welded together. But it doesn't make it over bumps really well because it's like 11 or 12 feet long, right? So I rented a trailer. You can see that it is a lift trailer. You'll see in a video here in a second how it works. But even so, with that lip at the tailgate, I still needed to rent a pallet jack to get it over that. It was fun, but we did it. You'll see here in a second it in its final resting place. Okay, so here we are with the pegboard and the butcher paper installed. Once again, some really cool videos on that you can find easily. And then here is the only picture, of course, that I have with the hole for the dust collection right there in the middle of the table. Don't know why I only have one. But I basically made a bracket so that it would hold the connector there right underneath, basically almost flush with the top, so that he could pull it out and slide it back in easily without it affecting anything else. Wish I would have taken a picture, but nope. So I know that this has been a little haphazard, but I hope you made it through and you can kind of see how it all came together. Although, if you would ask me before, it would not necessarily look like this. So I'd be interesting to hear your opinions, things that you would do differently. Feel free to ask questions in the comments. I'll respond as much as I can. But I'm really, really proud how this build came together, even though there were so many changes along the way. Let me know if there's something I can do for you, some more pictures. I don't really have more pictures, but I can always text the customer and see if he can help you out, help us out. So I think that's it. Until next time, adios.